The sky above New York was clear, the kind of blue that made people forget about pollution and politics. On a rooftop not far from Central Park, a small crowd had gathered. They were scientists, diplomats, military officers, and journalists. All of them looked up, waiting for something to appear. In orbit, a massive alien ship floated silently. It was silver, smooth like polished stone, and shaped like a teardrop. No one knew what it was called in the alien's language, so someone in NASA had given it a name, Vishara. It had been there for 3 weeks now, watching, listening, and sending messages through light pulses and sound waves. Those messages had taken months to decode. But once they were understood, the world changed forever. The aliens called themselves the Zalari. They said they were explorers, peacekeepers, and traders. They had traveled across space for thousands of years, meeting many species, some friendly, some not. They claimed to only make contact with those who had reached a certain level of technology and social stability. Humans, they said, were close. Enough. So began first contact. The United Earth Council, formed just 2 years earlier after several global crises, had chosen a team to greet the Zalari face-to-face. Among them was Jason Wilson, a former Marine-turned-diplomat. He wasn't the smartest man in the room, but he was calm under pressure and knew how to listen. Beside him stood Dr. Maria Gonzalez, an anthropologist who had spent her life studying human cultures. She believed that understanding others started with understanding yourself. They were joined by other experts, engineers, linguists, even a chef, because food was often the best way to build trust. The plan was simple. The Zalari would send down a small shuttle. Inside would be their delegation. They would land at a secure location, Central Park, cleared for the event, and meet the humans. The meeting would be broadcast live to every country on Earth. It was supposed to be peaceful. It was supposed to be historic. And it was. The shuttle descended slowly, almost like it was floating rather than flying. When it landed, there was no explosion, no smoke, just silence. Then, with a soft hiss, the door opened. 3 Zalari stepped out. They were tall, taller than any human, with pale skin that shimmered slightly in the sunlight. Their eyes were large, dark, and deep-set. They wore flowing robes that seemed to change color depending on the angle of the light. They moved gracefully like dancers, but with a quiet confidence. One of them stepped forward. She introduced herself as Vela, ambassador of the Zalari. Her voice was calm and melodic, translated through a small device on her collar. "We come in peace," she said. Jason stepped forward and bowed slightly, following the protocol agreed upon by the council. "Welcome to Earth," he said. Maria followed him, smiling gently. "Thank you for coming." Vela tilted her head slightly, observing them. "Your species has much potential. We are here to learn, to share, and to understand." The next few hours were filled with greetings, introductions, and short speeches. Cameras rolled, children waved flags, and the whole world watched in awe. Then came the ceremony. A formal gift exchange was part of the agreement. Both sides had agreed to present each other with items that represented their culture. The humans had chosen carefully. First, the Zalari presented their gifts. They gave a crystal sphere that contained a map of known star systems. They also gave a small device that could translate any spoken language in real time. A miracle of alien tech. Then it was the humans' turn. Each item had been selected with care. One was a painting by a famous artist. Another was a piece of music, recorded by a symphony orchestra. But the final gift was different. It was a knife, not just any knife. It was handmade, forged from steel by a local blacksmith named Luke Harper. He had been invited to the event and had personally placed it in the box handed to Vela. It was a Bowie knife, heavy and strong, with a wooden handle carved with symbols of peace and unity. Everyone expected Vela to smile, to thank them, maybe even to ask questions. Instead, she stared at the blade. For a long time, her expression didn't change, but her fingers tightened slightly around the handle. Then she spoke, her voice quieter than before. "What is this?" Jason smiled nervously. It's a traditional tool, used for survival, hunting, even art. It represents our ability to adapt, to survive, and to protect ourselves. Vela looked at the blade again. Then she turned to her companions and spoke in their own language. None of the humans could understand the words, but the tone was clear. Something was wrong. After a moment, Vela returned her gaze to Jason and Maria. This object must be studied. We cannot proceed until we understand its nature. Jason blinked. Okay, sure. Whatever you need. But the mood had shifted. Vela stepped back, her posture still polite but more rigid. She looked at the humans, then at the knife again. Please excuse us, she said. We must return to our vessel. Before anyone could respond, the Zalari walked back into their shuttle. The door closed behind them. Within minutes, the ship lifted off and vanished into the clouds. On the rooftop, the humans stood in stunned silence. What just happened? Someone whispered. Maria frowned, looking at the empty spot where the shuttle had landed. I don't know, but I think we just scared them. Back aboard the Vishara, the atmosphere was tense. Vela stood in a large chamber filled with glowing screens and floating data streams. Around her were other Zalari officials, all watching as the knife was scanned, analyzed, and tested. It was placed against various materials: metal, bone, fabric, even synthetic flesh. Each test showed the same result. The blade cut easily. Too easily. Vela watched as a simulation played out. A human holding the knife attacked a target. The damage was immediate, severe. The weapon required no power source, no trigger, no safety lock. It was always ready. She turned to a scientist named Tarek. How does it compare to our tools? Tarek hesitated. In terms of destructive efficiency, it is superior. Compact, silent, and lethal. It can bypass most of our defensive barriers if used correctly. Another official, Kalen, added, It is primitive, yes, but also unpredictable. Unlike energy weapons, it cannot be tracked or blocked by standard sensors. Vela nodded slowly. Then it is not a tool. It is a weapon. Yes, Tarek replied. And a very dangerous one. Vela looked back at the screen. The image of the human who had given her the knife flashed briefly. Jason Wilson. He had smiled when he handed it over. He had seemed proud. She felt uneasy. In Zalari society, violence was rare. Conflict was resolved through debate, mediation, and sometimes exile. Weapons were not forbidden, but access to them was tightly controlled. Every soldier, every guard, had to undergo years of training before being allowed to carry even a basic energy blade. But this was different. A single human could walk into a Zalari city with that knife and do unimaginable harm. Vela turned, away from the screen. We must act quickly, this changes everything. Meanwhile, on Earth, confusion reigned. The news spread fast. The aliens had left suddenly. No explanation, no goodbye. Government scrambled. Reporters asked questions. Conspiracy theories exploded online. Some said the Zalari were cowards. Others said the knife had insulted them somehow. A few even suggested it was a trick, that the aliens had never meant to be friends at all. Jason and Maria tried to stay calm. Maybe they just needed time, Maria said, pacing their hotel room. They're not like us. They might process things differently. You saw her face, Jason replied. She wasn't confused. She was afraid. Maria stopped pacing. Afraid of a knife? Yeah, Jason said quietly. Maybe to them, a knife is like a nuclear bomb. Maria looked at him. Do you think they'll come back? Jason shrugged. Depends on whether they see us as friends or threats. Outside, the city lights flickered. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled, and far above, the Vishara remained silent. Back on Earth, the silence from the Zalari stretched into days. At first, people thought it was just a delay. Maybe the aliens needed time to study the knife or consult their leaders. But as the days turned into a week, unease grew. Governments called emergency meetings. News channels ran endless speculation. Some said the Zalari had been insulted. Others believed they were hiding something. A few even claimed that the whole event had been faked. Jason Wilson sat alone in a small office at the United Earth Council building. The room was quiet except for the hum of the air vent above him. He stared at the screen on his desk, watching the same video over and over. The moment Vela took the knife. She hadn't smiled. She hadn't thanked them. She had only looked afraid. He leaned back in his chair and rubbed his eyes. Across the city, Dr. Maria Gonzalez was doing the same thing in her lab. She had gone through every word the Zalari had spoken during the meeting. Every gesture, every pause. Something about the knife had changed everything. On the Zalari ship Vishara, the mood was tense. In the central chamber, Ambassador Vela stood before a large floating display. Around her, high-ranking officials watched in silence as data scrolled past. The blade had been fully analyzed. It was not advanced by Zalari standards, but that was exactly what made it dangerous. It required no power source, no training, no authorization. Any human could pick it up and use it. A simulation played out on the screen. A human holding the knife entered a Zalari city. With quick, precise movements, he moved through crowds. Guards tried to stop him, but the weapon was too fast, too simple, too deadly. The simulation ended with a red flash across the screen. High risk of mass casualties. Vela turned to the others. "This is not a tool," she said. "It is a weapon. One we are not prepared to face." One of the officials, Kalen, spoke next. "We must act. If humans see this object as normal, then they may not understand the danger it poses." Another official, Tarek, added, "They do not regulate it, they carry it openly. Children are taught how to use it." Vela nodded slowly. "Then we cannot continue contact until we have full control over its use." Kalen frowned. "And if they refuse?" Silence filled the chamber. Finally, Vela spoke again. "Then we must leave. And we must warn the other species." Back on Earth, Jason and Maria met in a small cafe near the council building. The place was mostly empty, the usual morning crowd replaced by quiet tension. Maria stirred her coffee and looked at Jason. "Did you see the latest update?" she asked. Jason nodded. "They're saying the Zalari might never come back." "They're scared," Maria said softly. Jason raised an eyebrow. "Of a knife?" "Yes," Maria replied. "To them, a knife isn't just a tool, it's a threat, something they've never seen before." Jason sighed and looked out the window. "Maybe we should have given them something else. A book, a painting, anything but a blade." Maria shook her head. "No, we did the right thing. We showed them who we are. That's what first contact is about." Jason gave a dry laugh. "Yeah, well, maybe we shouldn't have shown them our love of sharp things." Outside, the city buzzed with life. People walked, cars moved, planes flew overhead. Life went on. But somewhere far above, the Vishara remained silent. Inside the ship, a new plan was forming. The Zalari would not return without guarantees. They would not allow such a dangerous object to remain unchecked. And so they drafted a message, one that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. Meanwhile, on Earth, rumors began to spread. Someone had leaked classified files, photos of the Zalari scanning the knife, translations of their private conversations. Words like dangerous, primitive, and uncontrolled appeared in headlines. Social media exploded. Some people laughed it off. They got scared of a knife? Come on. Others were angry. Who do they think they are? We offered peace and they insult us. But a smaller group started asking deeper questions. Why did they react that way? What do they know about weapons that we don't? Jason and Maria tried to stay out of the noise. Instead, they focused on finding answers. They reached out to linguists, historians, and scientists. They wanted to understand why the Zalari had reacted so strongly. Maria found a pattern. In all their recorded history, she told Jason, they've never used physical weapons, only energy-based ones. Those require power sources, safety locks, and training. Jason frowned. So they're used to technology that can be controlled. Exactly, Maria said. They don't know how to handle something that works without any of that. Jason leaned back. So to them, a knife is like a bomb we carry in our pockets. Maria nodded. And we don't even think about it. Back aboard the Vishara, the final decision was made. The message was ready. It would be sent to Earth within hours. Vela stood in front of the transmission panel. Her voice was calm, but her heart was heavy. This is Ambassador Vela of the Zalari High Council, she began. We regret to inform the people of Earth that we cannot proceed with further contact at this time. She paused, then continued. We have studied the object known as the knife. Our findings indicate that it is a highly effective weapon of mass destabilization. Its unrestricted use presents a serious threat to galactic peace. The message continued for several minutes, explaining the Zalari's concerns. It listed conditions for future contact. One of them was clear. All knives must be surrendered before relations can resume. The message ended with a final note. We hope one day to understand your species better. Until then, we must remain apart. As the signal was sent, the Vishara powered up its engines. Within minutes, the massive ship vanished from orbit. Back on Earth, the message hit like a thunderclap. World leaders gathered in emergency sessions. Scientists debated endlessly. Protesters took to the streets. Some called it an overreaction. Others saw it as a warning. Jason and Maria sat in the council chamber watching the chaos unfold on screens around them. I never thought a knife could start a crisis, Jason muttered. Maria looked at him. Maybe it wasn't the knife itself. Maybe it was what it represented. Jason turned to her. What do you mean? Maria stood up. They saw a weapon. We saw a gift. They saw danger. We saw tradition. They saw fear. We saw friendship. Jason exhaled slowly. We're not the same kind of people. No, Maria said quietly. But maybe that's the point. Outside, the sun was setting. The sky turned orange and pink. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled again, and far above, the Vishara was gone. The message from the Zalari spread across Earth like fire. Every screen, every speaker, every device played it again and again. The aliens had left. They had called the knife a weapon of mass destabilization, and they had made one thing clear. Humans could not be trusted with it. World leaders met in secret. Scientists tried to explain what had gone wrong. Reporters asked questions nobody could answer. And people? People were confused, angry, and afraid. In Washington, D.C., Jason Wilson sat at a long table with other diplomats. Around him were generals, scientists, and politicians. All of them looked tired. They think we're dangerous, one of the generals said. Because of a knife. Jason shook his head. Not just any knife. Any knife. All of them. Across town, Dr. Maria Gonzalez was in her lab, watching old footage of the meeting with the Zalari. She paused the video on the moment Vela held the blade. Her eyes studied the alien's face. She wasn't just surprised. She was scared. Maria turned to her assistant, a young man named Ben. They don't understand us, she said. They see danger where we see normal life. Ben frowned. But why would they run from a knife? Maria sighed. Because in their world, weapons are controlled, locked away, only used when needed. But here, knives are everywhere. We cook with them. We hunt with them. We even give them as gifts. Ben nodded slowly. So to them, it's like we all carry bombs. Exactly, Maria said. Back on Earth, protests began. Some people laughed at the Zalari's fear. Others took it seriously. A few even agreed. Maybe humans did need to control knives more. But most people were angry. On social media, hashtags like "We're not monsters" and "Knives are not WMDs" trended. Videos showed people cutting fruit, carving wood, and even performing surgery with knives. Chefs posted clips of themselves making beautiful meals. Artists showed how they used blades to create. One video went viral. An old man teaching his grandson how to whittle a small wooden bird. At the end, he held it up and said, "This is what a knife gives us. Not death. Life." But the Zalari didn't see those videos. They were already far away. Aboard the Vishara, the mood remained tense. Ambassador Vela stood in the central chamber, looking at reports from other alien species who had received Earth's contact data. Some had responded quickly. "We cannot allow this species into our space," wrote the Council of the Kethran Union. "Their weapons are too primitive and too easy to use." Another message came from the Threxians, a warlike race known for their brutal honesty. "If they scare you, then they must be strong. Let us test them." Vela read these messages with growing worry. She knew the Zalari had made a powerful statement by leaving, but now others were watching, and some of them might not be so peaceful. She turned to Kalen, one of her closest advisors. "We must find a way to explain ourselves." Kalen crossed his arms. "To whom? The humans will not listen. Other species will not wait." Vela looked out through the viewing window at the stars, beyond. "Then we must act before someone else does." Back on Earth, the United Earth Council called a global broadcast. It was the first time in history that all nations agreed to speak as one. Jason and Maria stood behind the main speaker, a woman named Director Lin. She was calm, but firm. "The Zalari have chosen to leave us," she said, "but we do not accept their decision as final. We believe there has been a misunderstanding, and we want to fix it." Murmurs spread through the crowd gathered in front of the stage. Director Lin continued, "We are not a violent species. We do not seek war. We gave them a knife because it is part of who we are, a symbol of survival, tradition, and trust." She paused. "We ask the Zalari to return, to talk, to learn, to understand." Behind her, Jason whispered to Maria, "Do you think they'll come back?" Maria looked at the sky. "I hope so." But days passed, then weeks, no sign of the Zalari. Meanwhile, governments debated what to do. Some wanted to send another message. Others wanted to build stronger ships in case the Zalari returned with enemies. And then something unexpected happened. A new signal reached Earth. It was not from the Zalari. It was from another species. The message was short. "Your planet is made under observation. We are not as kind as the Zalari." Panic spread. Military bases went on high alert. Cities prepared for the worst. Scientists tried to trace the signal, but it came from deep space. Whoever sent it was far away, for now. Jason and Maria watched the news together in a quiet room. Maria broke the silence. "They warned us. The Zalari did." Jason nodded. "They saw this coming." Maria looked at him. "Then maybe we should listen." Jason thought for a moment. "What if we show the galaxy what we really are? Not just with words, with action?" Maria smiled slightly. "You mean prove we're not dangerous?" "Yeah," Jason said. "But not by giving up our tools, by showing how we use them." Maria nodded. "A cultural demonstration. Show how knives are part of our lives, not just weapons." Jason stood up. "Let's make a plan." Outside, the sky was dark. Rain tapped against the windows. And somewhere, in space, the Vishara drifted silently, waiting for the next move. Jason Wilson sat at a small table in the United Earth Council building. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of lights above. Across from him, Dr. Maria Gonzalez looked through a pile of notes and maps. "We need to show them who we really are," Jason said. "Not just what we can do, but how we live." Maria nodded. "We need to prove that knives aren't just weapons to us. They're tools. Art, culture." Jason leaned forward. "So how do we show that?" Maria thought for a moment. Then she smiled. "We make a broadcast, a big one. We show them everything, how we use knives every day, around the world." Jason raised an eyebrow. "You mean like videos of people cutting food, carving wood?" Exactly, Maria said. Chefs, artists, doctors, survivalists, farmers, hunters, even kids learning how to use them safely. Jason grinned. That could work. They got to work right away. Within days, they had teams all over the world filming footage. In Japan, a sushi chef cut fish with fast, precise movements. In Brazil, a man carved animals out of wood. In Kenya, a farmer used a knife to prepare food for his family. In France, a sculptor shaped stone with sharp tools. Even in America, a teacher showed students how to whittle sticks into small figures. It teaches patience, she said, and respect. The more footage they gathered, the more they realized how much knives were part of daily life. Back aboard the Vishara, Ambassador Vela watched reports from other alien species. Some wanted to visit Earth. Others warned against it. They see us as weak, Kalen said, because we ran from a simple object. Vela looked at him. We did not run, we were cautious. Kalen crossed his arms. Others may not see it that way. Then a new message arrived. It was from Earth. The signal was strong. Clear. Vela opened it. The screen lit up with images. First, a chef slicing vegetables. Then, a woman carving a wooden bird. Next, a surgeon carefully operating on a patient. Then a boy being taught how to use a pocket knife by his grandfather. Voice after voice spoke. This is not a weapon, said a cook. This is how I feed my family. To me, this is art, said a sculptor. A knife gives me control, said a doctor. I teach my son to be careful, said a father. To respect the tool. Vela watched silently. Her face showed no emotion, but her eyes stayed fixed on the screen. Behind her, Tarek watched too. He frowned. They don't seem dangerous. No, Vela said quietly. They don't. She turned to Kalen. We judged them too quickly. Kalen looked surprised. You think we should return? Vela didn't answer right away. She looked back at the screen. The last clip played. A young girl holding a small wooden bird. She smiled and held it up proudly. Yes, Vela finally said. We must go back. Back on Earth, Jason and Maria waited. They stood outside the council building, looking up at the sky. The sun was setting, casting orange and pink light across the clouds. You think they'll come back? Jason asked. Maria nodded. I hope so. Jason looked at her. What if they still think we're dangerous? Maria smiled. Then we'll keep showing them. Again and again. Meanwhile, the Vishara changed course. Vela stood in the central chamber speaking to the crew. We made a mistake, she said. We saw danger where there was only difference. Tarek stepped forward. What will you tell them? That we want to understand, Vela replied. That we want to learn. Kalen looked at her. And if they refuse? Vela smiled slightly. Then we will earn their trust. Back on Earth, the video went viral. People shared it online, watched it again and again. Some called it proof that humans were peaceful. Others still worried about the Zalari's power, but most just felt hopeful. A teenager in Canada posted a comment. Maybe we're not so different after all. In Nairobi, a farmer read it and laughed. Nope, just better with tools. As the days passed, preparations began. If the Zalari returned, humanity would be ready. Not with weapons, not with fear, but with open hands and open minds. Jason and Maria worked with diplomats, scientists, and teachers. They planned meetings, lessons, even cultural exchanges. Have to be patient, Maria said. They're not like us. Jason grinned. Yeah, well, maybe we can teach them a thing or two. Outside, the wind blew gently. Birds flew overhead. Somewhere far away, thunder rolled, and high above, the Vishara drew closer. Its engines hummed softly as it re-entered Earth's orbit. The time for fear was ending. The time for understanding was beginning. Inside the massive ship, Ambassador Vela stood before her council. Around her were Kalen, Tarek, and other Zalari leaders who had once voted to leave Earth behind. We return not as judges, she said. We return as but as learners. Kaylin looked at her carefully. And if they still do not understand us? Vela turned toward the viewing window. The blue-green planet below glowed softly in the darkness of space. Then we will keep trying, she said. Back on Earth, the news spread fast. The Zalari were coming back. People gathered in cities, watching the sky for signs. Some cheered. Others watched quietly. A few still felt unsure. Jason Wilson stood outside the United Earth Council building with Dr. Maria Gonzalez. They looked up together. They're really coming back, Jason said. Maria smiled. I told you they would. Jason raised an eyebrow. You did not, she laughed. Okay, maybe I just hoped. They both knew what this meant. This was not just about first contact anymore. This was about second chances. Aboard the Vaishara, preparations began. Vela called for a new kind of meeting. Not just diplomacy, but cultural exchange. We must learn their ways, she told her people. Not just watch from afar. Tarek nodded. We will go down, as guests. Not as rulers. Kalen crossed his arms. And if something goes wrong, Vela looked at him. Then we will fix it. Together. On Earth, teams worked quickly. The original landing site in Central Park was chosen again. But this time, there would be no weapons, no barriers, only open space and open minds. Jason and Maria helped organize the event. They invited chefs, artists, doctors, farmers, anyone who could show how knives were used in daily life. This isn't just for them, Maria told a group of volunteers. It's for us too. We have to remember that we are not alone now. Jason added, we share this galaxy with others, and we need to earn their trust just like they need to earn ours. The day came. The sky was clear. People stood quietly in large groups watching the sky. Cameras rolled. Children held flags made by hand. From above, the Zalari shuttle descended slowly. It landed with a soft hiss. The door opened. This time, only 3 Zalari stepped out. Vela led the way. She wore simple robes, not the ceremonial ones from before. Behind her were 2 others, one a scientist, the other a teacher. Jason and Maria walked forward. Vela bowed slightly. We come again, Jason smiled. We're glad you did. Maria stepped beside him. We have a lot to show you. Theo. Next few hours were filled with quiet learning. Chefs showed how they cut food. Artists carved wood and stone. Doctors explained how they used surgical blades. Farmers showed how they used knives to care for crops and animals. One man even taught a Zalari how to whittle a small wooden bird. As the sun set, Vela sat with Jason and Maria under a tree near the edge of the park. I thought your species was dangerous, she said. Because of the knife. Jason nodded. I get it. To you, it looked like a weapon. It still does, Vela admitted. But now I see it as more than that. Maria leaned forward. To us, tools are part of life. We don't think of them as good or bad. We think of how we use them. Vela looked at her hands. Your people carry danger so easily, Jason chuckled. So do yours, just in different ways. Vela gave a small smile. Perhaps you are right. She looked at the people around them, humans laughing, teaching, sharing. You are not like us, she said. But maybe that is not a bad thing. Back aboard the Vishara, the message was sent to other alien species. To all who fear the humans, they are not what they seem. They are not perfect, but they are willing to learn, to teach, to grow. And most importantly, the message ended, they are ready to join the stars. In the weeks that followed, more meetings took place. The Zalari stayed longer. They asked questions, took notes, even tried cutting vegetables with human-made knives. Some struggled at first. Their fingers moved differently. Their grip was unsure, but they kept trying. Back on Earth, the world changed. People talked more about other cultures, about other species, about what it meant to live among the stars. Schools added new lessons. Books were written, movies were made, and slowly the idea of being part of something bigger became real. Jason and Maria continued working with the Zalari delegation. They helped build a new program, a joint cultural observatory where humans and aliens could study each other without fear. One day, Vela visited the observatory. She brought a young Zalari child with her. The child looked around with wide eyes. Then he saw a small wooden box on a table. Inside were training knives, blunt, safe, made for learning. He pointed at them. "What are those?" Vela looked at Jason and Maria. Maria smiled. "Tools." Jason knelt down. "Would you like to try one?" The child looked at Vela. She nodded. Carefully, the boy picked up a small knife. He looked at it closely. Then he smiled. Vela watched him, then looked at Maria and Jason. "Maybe," she said. "We are not so different after all." Jason grinned. "Nope, just better with tools." Outside, the wind blew gently through the trees. Birds flew overhead. Somewhere far away, thunder rolled. And high above, the Vishara floated peacefully in the sky. Its mission was no longer to judge, but to understand.